basically now that it's gone live, it'll just take a few seconds for people to, see it and stuff like that, because obviously Facebook services it out, YouTube services it out. So we're just going to wait a minute here for some people to come on in and check out what it is that's going on here and what we're going to be talking about here. So, all right, see one person in so far. It's going to take a minute. Usually it takes like a couple. There's two. All right, they're starting to trickle on in. Yeah. Welcome.
Welcome, everyone.
Welcome. Our couple, it's Sunday, right? I was like, okay, that's our couple of Sunday people. All right, now we're starting to see some more people. Awesome. So we are here today with John Bush, and we're going to be talking about his life and his work and his business, specifically with, and I hope I say this right, kratom. Is that right? I always butcher. Okay, that works.
Kratom.
Some people say kratom.
Yeah.
I'm like, I never know what it is. I just listen to what people say. I'm like, I guess.
Tomato.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. You drink it. So basically, yeah, so we're going to be talking about that, of course, and his work with Brave Botanicals and why he is so passionate about what he does. And so, we're trying to continue our series of interviews, humanizing people who are out there doing work within the Liberty Movement and also providing great products and services, because I think that's really important, entrepreneurship in the Liberty world, not just talking about ideas, but actually going out there and providing value to real people in the real world. So again, thank you so much, John, for coming on. Looks like we now have a good amount of people. It looks like it's serviced around. So if you would, John, could you tell us first a little bit about yourself and your background, that is how you got into becoming a passionate supporter of liberty and voluntary human action?
Sure. I was always a bit of a rebel in school, getting in trouble as a class clown. We even organized in high school this student anarchist front to protest. Well, I didn't really know what anarchism was then, but it was a protest of these detention policies. Where if you're like 1 minute late, you get a 30-minute detention. So we organized a big walkout and stuff, although the principal shut it down. But so I always had that inherent just defiance. And then in 2002, I saw a documentary by Alex Jones, who's gone so far off the deep end from back then. But it was all about 9/11 and how the criminal elements within our government and other governments carried out those attacks. And so that was a huge eye opener for me, and maybe like a sense of betrayal. And that led down the rabbit hole to investigating conspiracy theories and plots to create totalitarian, technocratic global dictatorships. And that's where I was kind of vibing for a while. And then started learning about the Constitution and started to appreciate that, although later I would not appreciate it, but it had some cool stuff at the time for me. And then in 2007, when Ron Paul ran for president, that's when I was exposed to libertarianism in a big way. And so that very much resonated with me, kind of putting a political philosophy to the ideas that I already had. And rocked his campaign, met a lot of people all around the country. We started a political action committee here in Central Texas called Texans for Accountable Government. They're still around to this day, focusing on like police state, privacy stuff. Freedoms at the local and state level, local and state legislature. And and done all sorts of different stuff, involved in some nonprofits, learned about cryptocurrency early on. And at that time I was really into agorism, and I knew that the way to change society for the better, to create more freedom, isn't through the political channels, rather it's through alternative institutions, or growing your own food, self-defense, alternative currencies like bartering silver and cryptocurrency. And that was really a big focus. And then more recently, I started focusing, kind of turning inward, because everyone's focused on the tyrants out in DC or wherever. But a lot of people have internal tyrants. And I think when we can really get right with that, then there'll be like an outward expression of joy, and it'll be easier for us to pursue our goal of freedom when we're free on the inside. And it came about, got turned on natural health along the way. And yeah, it's been a fun journey.
Speaking of that kind of internal change there, one thing that I really liked that you posted in the past was things about peaceful parenting. Could you share a bit about, peaceful parenting and nonviolent communication and maybe how that's impacted your life?
Sure. Yeah, I have two kids. They're 6 and 8 years old right now. They're super sweet and super wild and like total sovereign, not total sovereign, but man. And so their mom and I have always prescribed to peaceful parenting. So definitely no spanking, no timeouts. I've dabbled sometimes in a little rewards and punishment, just to try to maintain some semblance of order. But we're definitely not authoritarian with our kiddos, and I think that honors their freedom. I don't want to coerce or control them or teach them that it's okay to use violence or threats of violence in order to get people to change their behavior. And that's what happens when like parents are threatening or spanking children. It's kind of priming them for authoritarianism. And then nonviolent communication is an awesome method of communication where you speak in terms of your feelings and needs, and you make requests in order to have those needs met. And it's just a radically different way of communicating. Most people aren't taught how to talk about their feelings and needs, and there's all sorts of passive aggressiveness and fighting and little jabs. And I think if people were to study this nonviolent communication and first get in tune with their feelings, how they're feeling, learn how to communicate that, then see why you're feeling that way, it's often because you have an unmet need. So you identify the need, and then the philosophy, this guy named Marshall Rosenberg, teaches you to make requests so those needs can be met, so you can have more joy in your life. But yeah, those are awesome tools on how to relate to other human beings.
That's awesome. And would you agree that you found, that nonviolent communication useful as well?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting that we're so aligned in our philosophies. Your focus, what you said about how people need to work on examining if they have a tyrant in themselves, in a way, like parts of themselves that justifies violence or coercion. And I talk about NVC all the time here. And to me, nonviolent communication is just a framework for how to, and a framework with guiding principles for how to examine reality.
Mm-hmm.
I think that NVC is just focused on, when you say how you feel, what do you need, when you focus on that instead of placing judgments on people. I think the reason it's valuable is because judgments and labels aren't accurate to reality. Like, a human being is not bad in terms of that label. It's more specific actions that they're doing that you disagree with or whatever. So to me, NVC is just an extension of philosophy. I don't, I think it's in line with it really well. So.
Yeah, it's very special. It can really help save relationships too.
Absolutely.
It's not like a panacea.
No, it to me, it's a framework for like, how do you focus on being honest with how you
with
feel?
Yourself.
And yes, exactly. And how do you see reality for what it is as well? So getting to the root of whatever is going on in terms of a human relationship or a conflict that you have with somebody. It's trying to see the reality for what it is. And that's why Marshall Rosenberg talks a lot about how you should focus, if you feel whatever about somebody, if you have a conflict, focus on the specific actions that happened or specific things that were said, instead of focusing in the pseudo realm of imagination of what that person is, if that makes sense. So
yep. And everybody,
really
a lot of people are defensive and insecure, so it helps to get what it is that you want to communicate across in a more effective manner, not only for you to be heard, but also for them to receive it well. And it's just a game changer. And it's one of those things where there's so many cycles, like there's political cycles of tyranny and then revolution, and then maybe a tiny bit of limited government, and then it goes back to tyranny. And I think we're just carrying out so many cycles, like meta cycles with governments and history and wars, and then little micro generational cycles. And one thing I'm a big Derek Bros fan.
Reactionary.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've been a Derek Bros fanboy for quite some time, and
I was actually going to ask you, if you're in Central Texas, if you are involved with the conscious resistance at all, because that's a big part of their philosophy. which is like we can't overturn tyranny and end this cycle of, you know, tyranny and, like you said, semi-limited government and then back to tyranny, because first we need self-knowledge and need to get to the root of why we have these cycles of violence in place.
Yep. Yeah. Derek's down the road in Houston, and we've always coalesced and worked together, and does interviews with me sometimes. And I've known him since 2010, way back in the day when Catherine and I were doing a tour exposing fusion centers, the Department of Homeland Security, Big Brother information intelligence sharing systems, which are now like all over the place. But bro, I love Bros. Bros is on point with his whole holistic approach.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And speaking of Big Brother tyranny, not wanting you to have functional communication with your loved ones and not wanting you to have self-care, how did all of your work lead to you wanting to help people with their health with Brave Botanicals?
Well, that whole holistic freedom idea, right? Like a lot of libertarians and people in the movement talk about political freedom, but there's so much more to life than political freedom. Like someone could arguably be politically free and live in a genuinely free society and like still have a crappy relationship with their mom, or treat everyone around them bad, or have chronic illness and chronic fatigue. So like I'm after the pursuit of total freedom in all different areas. And so along the way, natural health started getting important to me when we first started talking about having kids, and we felt like we need to get our bodies in shape and get things nice and balanced so we can keep up with these kiddos and raise happy, healthy children. And so just really started exploring alternative remedies and stopped going to the doctor, and found a naturopath that's like an amazing healer, and he does this cool energy work and stuff. And I think my first big experience was with colloidal silver. I had a really bad tooth infection that would come back. I'm sorry, this wasn't the tooth infection. I had a throat infection, and it was so painful that I couldn't get up off the couch. And when I would like lean up to sit up, I would just be in excruciating pain. So his naturopath recommended that I nebulize with colloidal silver. It's like vaporizing colloidal silver, which is like antiviral, antibacterial. And I did it, and like literally 10 to 15 minutes later, the chest pain and the infection must have just cleared up. In literally like 15 minutes, I had profound effects, and I did it on the couch for another hour or two and was just like new. So that was a really big eye opener, just tapping into the power of natural medicine. And then when I ran Brave New Books in Austin, Texas for a couple of years, people didn't really buy books. It was a meeting space bookstore, but we mainly sold health products. That's what kept the lights on. And so kratom was one of those health products for a little while, which was relatively obscure. Even for me selling it at my store, not a lot of people would come and buy it, and I didn't try or experiment with it too much. And then the government tried to ban it in 2016. The DEA tried to add it to Schedule 1 to make it a controlled substance, and that's when it absolutely exploded. And all these other vendors got scared and pulled back, but we leaned into it because through my history of activism, I knew like until the DEA actually says it's felony Schedule 1, then it's totally fair game. So that was a big opportunity to get behind this awesome plant.
That's really wild. Yeah. I mean, it's really surprising, too, that, suddenly this random thing that, kratom that like would come up as a Schedule 1. When I saw that, I just couldn't help but think to myself, I'm like, wait, where, like, how do they even get that idea? You know what I mean? In this day and age, that this doesn't even compare to what supposedly, the Schedule 1 listings are supposed to be, like no medical purpose, completely addictive, dangerous kind of stuff. And of course, historically, they had marijuana in there, which, as has been shown now, thankfully, because many states it's become legal, that's total bunk. And we, fingers crossed, hope to see a change in that soon enough. But it just boggled my mind. I'm like, where would they even begin to suggest that kratom would fall under this category? So I just found that very bizarre, and I'm glad that you mentioned that the government was trying to ban this in the first place.
I also find it an interesting phenomena is that I was one of those people, many people who never even heard of kratom before until they tried to ban it, and then started seeing articles about, oh, there's this new thing that's going to be banned, and that's when people started looking into it, and they're like, oh, actually, maybe I should try it.
Yeah,
So it's
man,
kind of
that
funny
sounds
how
great.
it works. Yeah.
The FDA doesn't like it, I'm in. Yeah, you go back and look at the Google search statistics, and kratom just absolutely skyrocketed for Google searches after the DEA did that. And then of course they failed because there was such a big grassroots movement that emerged, because kratom really helps people to get their lives back. So probably people that were never activists or never called a congressman or whatever rose up and were able to push back, like 50 US representatives and 10 or 11 US senators. They all sent a letter to the DEA telling them to back off, and it was a little victory. But the government's still been hard at work trying to ban it at the state level. But maybe I can just give a quick description of what kratom is for folks that are like, what the heck is that? Kratom's a member of the coffee family, and it's made from the powderized leaves of the kratom evergreen tree, which is grown primarily in Southeast Asia. We import ours from Indonesia, and it's been used for hundreds of years in Southeast Asia as a folk remedy to help get boosts of energy when you're working in the field. And interestingly, it was also used to help for people to overcome opium addiction back in the day, like in Thailand. Really popular in Thailand, Indonesia, and Malaysia. And there's two distinct varieties. There's three distinct varieties: red, green, and white. The red ones, is the color of the powder. They tend to be a little more sedative and better for your body. People take the red ones for chronic pain. A lot of people take it instead of prescription pain medicine. A lot of people take it to get off of a dependency on prescription pain medicine, or even opiates like heroin and hardcore stuff. And then also help sleep and relax in general. And then the white ones tend to be a little more uplifting and energetic, and they're good for focus and motivation, stress and anxiety. I use the white and the green ones as an entrepreneur when my brain starts to get a little cloudy, usually like around 12 or 1. Not right now, though. My brain will start getting foggy, and so I'll make a little kratom drink, and it just kind of sharpens me up and gives me a little pep. And then the green ones, they're kind of in the middle of the red and white. This is what a green kratom looks like here. You can take it in capsules. I prefer the raw plant powder because it just tends to be a little stronger and it's not as subtle, but this is convenient, and some people don't like the taste. But the green ones are really good for stress and anxiety, and they tend to have a little bit more euphoria than the whites. But there's a broad range of effects. If you take a small amount, it could be like a little stimulating, just a tiny little subtle boost. If you take a larger amount, it could really help with pain or just kind of have you sit back feeling pretty chill. But it's subtle. It's not as much of a state change as smoking cannabis with THC, but it's like a nice little background enhancement for the day. Especially if you got like a lot of stuff going on, you're feeling a little overloaded. It helps to take the edge off, I like to say.
So you said it was in like the caffeine family. How would you compare it to, coffee? Like if someone was like, well, I'm a coffee drinker, how would this compare to like maybe me drinking coffee or maybe some type of caffeinated tea or something like that? How would you describe it?
Yeah, it's in the coffee family. I think it's like rubica, Rubica. And it's so the white ones can have that little energetic boost, but unlike coffee, kratom has like a little mild euphoria to it. So coffee, I feel good when I drink coffee every day, and like, I enjoy it and feels good a little bit, but it's not like that feels good. The kratom is a little uplifting boost, but then it also comes with like, and like just a nice flow. So it's similar. It's somewhat similar. What's that?
Because coffee is more usually just pure upper. There's not a different kind of coffee that you can take that will sedate you. Whereas that's really fascinating that there's 3 different kinds of kratom, or 3 general kinds. It kind of even reminds me of like when you're explaining like red, white, and green. It almost sounded like you were explaining the differences between sativa, indica, and hybrid of both. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, there's some parallels there. It's not as specific or what's the word? I don't know, cultivated. Like it's not strains like cannabis seeds which the farmers and stuff are really careful not to cross pollinate here and there. The colors are determined by the colors on the leaves. So the red ones will have red veins and they'll have a darker color, and then the white ones will have lighter colored veins. And then the drying process also changes how the alkaloids affect you. So the red ones are a little more sedative. Coffee, white kratom would probably be most similar to coffee. And that's a good one again for energy, focus, kind of stress and anxiety. Some people take it instead of alcohol, like people that struggle with alcohol and they still want to go out with their friends. You can mix up a kratom drink and hang out playing board games or whatever, and you're drinking something that kind of helps.
Cool. Save your liver.
Yeah, it's better for your liver than alcohol for sure. It helps with social. It's a social lubricant, people like to say. So kind of just, you're a little more talky, and especially if someone like has social anxiety disorder or something, they feel uncomfortable out and about. That's why a lot of people drink, I think, when they go out, because they're like, I don't know how to have conversations with people, so let's get drunk.
Right.
But it helps to take the edge off, or maybe you'll feel a little more approachable or just a little more outgoing. There's like so many different uses. It's nuts.
Yeah, and probably more to be discovered. And it's part of the reason, as voluntarists in general, we don't like the state intervening. We don't like a central group of people dictating, hey, that's it. We shouldn't like investigate anything else, or we assume that we have all knowledge about the world, so let's just ban this. It's like there's so much more about cannabis, kratom, like all kinds of things that can be explored, and people should be free to investigate more and experiment. But yeah, is there caffeine in kratom if it's part of the coffee family, or no?
No caffeine.
Separate? Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Some people think coffee makes them feel edgy and stuff. The kratom tends not to have the edginess.
Is there also, is there any like limitations though? Of course someone shouldn't, right, like pour a bunch of kratom. Like, do people need to be careful about dosage? Is there side effects? Is there potential for overdose or negative, repercussions?
Sure.
Taking too much?
That's a great question. We do offer a free ounce. We can talk about how hard it's been to be in the kratom industry and how the government and Facebook and everything's censoring and putting out all sorts of disinformation and stuff. But in an effort to work around that, I was like, you know what? This plant's so cool. It helps so many people. I just want to give it away for free. So we set up this website, freeounceofkratom.com, and people can pay $5 shipping and handling and try an ounce of our most popular variety, Green Maeng Da, just to try. So if it's your first time taking it, then it's recommended to take it on a full stomach. Some people, if they take it the first time and they take a little bit too much, can maybe feel a little nauseous. That's why I encourage people to take it on a full stomach, because it really reduces the chance of that. And it's good to mix with, like, so I'll get a glass like this or a bigger cup and I put 2 good sized teaspoons. That's because I take it pretty regularly. But if you're just starting out, maybe a half a teaspoon or less in a big thing of water or juice. And then when it's your first time, rather than taking a full dose or like taking several capsules, you can kind of sip on it to subtly monitor the effects and how it feels. Right. And then so if you're like, oh, this actually feels a little funny, then you can just pull back. But if you're like, okay, I'm starting to feel that subtle little euphoria, I'm actually feeling pretty good about life right now, then you can you can continue on. The side effects are pretty few and far between. Constipation could be a side effect if you take a lot of it. My dad had a great tip to mix it with psyllium husk, which is very fibrous and helps with bowel movements. And it can be habit forming. That's my PC way of saying addicted. People can become dependent on kratom, but people can become dependent on coffee as well. And it is an opioid.
So many people dependent on coffee.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like every day, I know there are people at work who are just like, they drink several cups.
Oh yeah, they're pounding it.
They get off work, they take another cup to drive home. It's just like, wow, that's an addiction. I can't drink it late in
the day. I'll be wired. Well, there's this guy named Dr. Gabor Mate. He's a medical doctor, and he does a lot of work with people struggling with addiction. And he defines addiction as one of the elements for the definition is that there's negative effects on you or your loved ones, yet you still continue to keep doing it. So
Mhm.
when it comes to being addicted to kratom, a lot of people, it enhances their life. They're more patient. They're like better at showing up to work. So I don't know that I would use the word addicted, but there are some people that take a whole lot of it. People
Mm.
that formerly were addicted to pain pills or even heroin, and they
Mm.
used kratom because some of the varieties help minimize withdrawal symptoms. It's a great tool that people use to get off of opioids, which is so, the timing is just perfect that it's exploding in popularity. It's probably exploding in popularity because of this big opioid epidemic. But
Right.
people people that were formerly addicted to like hardcore opiates or something sometimes find themselves addicted to kratom. But in these instances, or dependent on kratom, I should say, in these instances, it's an example of harm reduction, because unlike taking too many pills or overdosing on heroin, the kratom more than likely isn't going to kill you. Now, the FDA and CDC have said that there was like 46 and 91 kratom related deaths, whereby out of that 91, there's only like 7 that had only kratom in the system. And for some of those 7, with the FDA's numbers as well, like one person fell out of a window, one person was shot. So it's highly unlikely that
What?
taking kratom, and then
Oh,
they
wow.
use that
What
number
a
as a
way
kratom
to
related
twist.
death.
That's a good reminder to always literally, when you see statistics or numbers, like you really have to read about where those numbers come from.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, gun death statistics. Oh, okay.
Uh-huh.
A lot of those are suicides. Okay. Wow.
A lot of them are in Chicago and Washington, D.C.
I'm glad you actually, discussed that. Just because, again, like with anything, you always want to talk about the positives and the risks and things like that. And I enjoy, for example, coffee, but I understand that if I drink too much of it, I'm going to get jittery. I can get sick. It can make me feel unwell. And people have dependencies on, all kinds of substances, whether it's, food and sugar, or having coffee several times a day. So it's just an important reminder that no matter what you put into your body, you always want to be mindful of how it's affecting you and whether you're becoming dependent on whatever it is. If it becomes the point where it's like you can't function, or you're treating others poorly, or you neglect your important responsibilities because of whatever it is you're doing, then that's, as you said, like that's where it becomes a real problem for anything, whether it's eating too much food or eating bad food or drinking whatever it is, alcohol, coffee, that is causing you to not meet your responsibilities and not take care of yourself. It's always an important thing, no matter what you do.
Not just substances too. And I'm glad you brought up Gabor Mate. He has a book called In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts, where he talks about how the addictions that have been most negatively stigmatized in society have been chemical or substance related addictions. But there's addictions of all kinds. There's shopping addictions, there's spending addictions, sex addictions, different kind of things like that. And what it all ties to, as he advocates for, is, and why his book is called In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts, is like addiction stems from people who aren't getting their needs met. They are trying to fill some sort of void. And I think that's how you can see the phenomena of somebody, maybe using kratom to get off harder substances, but still, in a sense, maybe taking too much kratom, and like they're on a drive to fill some void. And that's why we always advocate for self-knowledge and trying to find the root of why you're doing something, why you think, feel, and act the way you do. It's so important to give yourself that time every day to always think about and process, because otherwise we're just going to continue to react and form habits to meet our needs. But we got to, leverage our higher order thinking, our prefrontal cortex, to try to really analyze what we're doing instead of just reacting.
Yeah, I really like that, and I'm glad that y'all are on that wavelength. It's missing in a lot of people, especially in this little movement of ours. And that's the hard part. Being in this business, I came to learn that a lot of my customers and people around me struggled with addiction and dependency, and so I understand and recognize that kratom is just like a surface level solution. And like you said, a lot of people experience pain and trauma in their lives, and in order to truly heal from that stuff, people have to be willing to do the work and to go examine those demons or those things that were covered up and hidden away. And that's really hard. We started a Brave New You recovery support group on Facebook. And it's a spot where in my emails, and I encourage people to join that so they can have community and some accountability partners and just a nice place to share, because it is a lot of people that are struggling and they use kratom as a crutch in some instances. But like you said, it's there's a void that people are trying to fill. And I'm listening to that book right now, In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts, on Audible, and it's really good and eye-opening. And you guys talked about humanizing at the beginning of the show. He does a good job of humanizing these homeless addicts that are just all messed up. And one of the things that he talks about is how the human brain is literally rewired to not be able to make healthy choices. And the orbital frontal cortex, he says, is if you have trauma or lack of care and you were neglected by your parents when you were really young, then there's already a predisposition in your orbital frontal cortex, which regulates behaviors that maybe you shouldn't do or that aren't appropriate around other people. It also regulates the ability to weigh short-term gain versus long-term cost. And so people are already susceptible to that. Then they start doing drugs and stuff like cocaine, and it makes the frontal orbital cortex even more abnormal, and it perpetuates the cycle even more. So I think it's really important to have compassion for people that are struggling. Have boundaries and don't let people walk all over you or hurt those around you. But for people struggling with addiction, and same thing with like statism and stuff. There's a lot of nose in the air libertarians and anarchists. I used to be one of them.
That is a parallel.
Yeah, especially about people that are voting and stuff. But it's like, we all go through our evolution. Maybe some people never really evolved to freedom or whatever as an ideal, but we just need to be patient with everyone and understand that not everyone's coming from the same place we are. Everyone has their own unique human experiences.
Yeah, definitely.
Exactly. And that's why I'm glad that you're doing the work that you're doing now, because I think it's cool that you're out there providing a product that not only helps people who are struggling, but also for people who are just, wanting to have something that makes them feel a little bit more alert or awake without doing something that's way more dangerous or risky, right? Mm-hmm. It's a great thing that when the market's freed and people are able to freely share knowledge, that better solutions can arise and can really help people who are in need, both on like a physical level and also on a psychological level. And I think that it's really important bringing that to the table. And I think we try to do that here too with our work, is that we like educating people both on philosophy, but also on how they can make better decisions for themselves, for their body, for their loved ones and things like that. Because, being a well-rounded person in terms of self-care and self-knowledge, at least for me, and you could, comment this too, is one of the most important things, as you said, the internal state in terms of changing the next generation for peace and for liberty, is that if we don't take care of ourselves and we don't, become more functional and treat those, who are going to be the next generation with more kindness and compassion, understanding, and develop their philosophy, anything that we could have is just a short-term gain, right? It's not going to last unless we do things that are sustainable. And so to me, sustainable liberty is a holistic approach, not just the philosophy of like property rights and things like that, but also thinking about self-knowledge and self-care. So that's why I'm really glad you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah. Seems like everything we advocate for is about enabling human flourishing. Like, why do we advocate for philosophy, for people to value truth over falsehood? Is because we want humans to flourish. Why do we focus on self-knowledge and working on your relationships and trying to have healthy ones where you get your needs met? It's because we want people to flourish and have actually happiness in this life.
Yep. There's a lot of unhappiness in the world. It doesn't have to be that way, because there's a lot of beauty too.
Yeah, definitely. But also recognizing, we've inherited, each of us born on this world, we inherited this history of violence and turmoil and trying to find truth in this expansive, large universe. So we're all doing the best we can. And I think that's why compassion is also important, is to recognize like our fellow humans, most are trying to get their needs met and flourish just like we are. So
Mhm.
the question is, how do we achieve that together? And how do we not repeat what has continued the cycle of violence? And yeah, philosophy is one of those ways.
Yeah,
Or actually,
it's
I'd
good.
argue the way, but yeah.
It's pretty fundamental. There's a cool, there's a great global awakening taking place, and you could see it. And there's still like setbacks and so much tyranny and terrible things, but there's this mass questioning where, and I think the internet was one of the big catalysts for this. But before, like the state and their press put out the truth, and now there's alternative places to find information, and it's just totally undermined the narrative that's played out in governments and states throughout history. And it relates back to kratom too, because when I talk to people about kratom and then they go Google it, you get all these terrible articles, and just the mainstream media parrots the FDA and CDC press releases they put out, and they don't dig a little deeper to see that some of the articles actually do point out the kratom related deaths, nonsense stuff. But I have faith in the fact that so many more people, if someone Googles kratom and then they see a CNN article that says it's terrible and you should stay away from it, and they're like, oh, that doesn't sound safe. It's like, that's not my customer base. That's not the people I'm trying to reach. I'm trying to reach outside of the box thinkers that are fed up with the status quo and are like feeling so desperate they want to try something that, even though the powers that be and the media says is bad news bears. And I'm finding that there's more and more people that are distrusting the Center for Disease Control. Even people are being skeptical of their doctors now. And I think there's like, we all need to have an authority in ourselves and go with our gut and try to have like a base level of knowledge about different topics so you can make sound decisions and judgments without having to wholeheartedly rely on the authority of someone else. And that's when it comes to states and governments and tyranny over one another, but also when it comes to our health and how we navigate that. So that's the cool thing about kratom. Like, yeah, it sounds weird for a lot of people, but it's taking your health into your own hand and mixing it up with plant medicines like they've been used for hundreds and thousands of years. Same thing with cannabis. And I think it's really empowering when people can get back to that place where they're in tune with their body and they're the authority over their lives.
Absolutely.
Seems like the internet is leading to more decentralization of knowledge and increasing the focus on individualism, like focusing on yourself as being the one who's responsible for, your life and what you do. And thus taking ownership of the information that you take in and what you decide to believe, and not outsourcing that, not giving up your control and responsibility to somebody else. I think the internet has just, with all the different content creators, videos, memes, productions, things like that have been outside, the traditional like radio, TV, centralized model, it's allowed for individuals, certain individuals, to see an alternative and then just start to question. Oftentimes it just takes like one seed or maybe just multiple seeds to get someone to just start like thinking differently, search an alternative to what they thought. So yeah.
Then it's all downhill from there.
Or
what is it, the blue pill? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So
red pill?
Oh yeah, well he said like blue, like opposite, you're saying, as opposed to the red pill.
Well, which one is on the Matrix? Which one are you supposed to take to get the truth?
Oh,
the red one.
Blue
red
pill. Yeah, red pill is the truth.
Wake up.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, wake up. Okay.
It is kind of like the Matrix, isn't it? When you finally wake up and realize, wait a second, everything that is being said to me in like the mainstream news and government and public schools, it's not exactly how things are going down in empirical reality.
Those movies are great. I think there's a new one coming out.
I think it's interesting. Like I've noticed this kind of phenomena of when people start to go down the quote rabbit hole, like the first phase I've seen some people get in is they just think like they like all or nothing, like everything the government says is wrong, like only follow alt media, but like through experience they realize, like whether it's maybe Alex Jones saying something that's not totally true, like they learn from experience that, okay, actually now I just need to be responsible for myself and actually learn critical thinking, because whether you're in the state or not, you're a human being, human mind is prone to error. So, you know, don't like generalize. You got to learn how to actually think. And I've seen that phase in people play out before. Like they go in and they're just like, okay, everything the government says is wrong. But then they actually realize, like, no, truth is much harder to attain, and it takes thinking.
Yeah, and all the media and everybody has their own little bias, and it's only natural. We all act in our own self-interest, but it's good for people to think for themselves. That's really what it's all about, the critical thinking. You kind of have your little BS meter, which is in your gut. That's a great source for truth and knowledge. There's this awesome essay by Martha Beck called maybe I'll remember it later, but it's called How to Tune to Your Inner Wisdom. And she talks about how to get in tune and get in alignment with your gut, because there's like a brain in our stomachs as well. And there's a feeling there that you can have, you know, when something's like off, or when someone's around you and you're like, oh, I don't feel good about that person. And you kind of have like spidey senses going on. A lot of that's centered in your gut. And in the article, they pointed out, which I thought was really cool, that it was a relatively recent phenomenon in human evolution, that spoken word was even the method of communication. So, of course, I learned that not everyone has an internal monologue going on in their head, but we have the language that's playing out in our thoughts, our mind, but that can be clouded, and that can have our own biases, or the biases that are imprinted upon us by family, friends, culture. And if we can kind of try to quiet that chatter, blah, 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 what are you doing? You're never going to make it, or whatever. And like get in tune with the gut. And like, that's where it can really help us to, you know, chart our course. And I just like that article, How to Tune Your Inner Wisdom.
Oh, that's interesting. I would have to wonder, like, do you think people's guts feelings can be different depending on their preconceived beliefs about the world and reality? You know, like, or unexamined things about themselves. Like if they get a bad feeling about something, you know, it could be due to something they haven't processed inside themselves.
Yeah. But that would be the signal to, like, if you're a conscious person and you know that when there's something that's off, or like when you get angry or whatever, that's your opportunity to be like, why did that trigger me so much? What's going on here? Let me unpack that a little bit. And I think the gut is a closer source of truth because it doesn't have all this analysis and talking and stuff. It's just like the raw feeling. But I mean, it could lead people astray, and it's like a holistic approach. But yeah, going with your gut and everybody thinking for themselves is big.
That's interesting. It makes me think of like how I've tried to articulate it before is like your subconscious. Like there's your conscious mind and your ability. Like me right now, I can only take in so much about what's going on in the environment right now. So I'm consciously choosing to like focus on your voice or the chat or something like that. But maybe there's background noise and, you know, around or whatever. But it's like, I think of the subconscious as the thing that like picks up everything. And I wonder if that's related to the gut feeling that the lady's talking about in her article.
Maybe so.
Like, interesting.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, John, if you would, could you just kind of give a summary wrap here of what you want people to take away with your work and with Brave Botanicals, and things you want them to check on out and connect with you with?
Yeah. So my big focus lately has been my business and earning a living and growing the standard of living for me and my kids. And it's a beautiful overlap between my business and my activism, because I have a compassionate heart. I want to help people. And then the cool thing about kratom is that it's like an anti-government plant, which is kind of weird, but it's like anti-authoritarian in itself to sell kratom, because it's like a big no-no. So it really helps a lot of people. A lot of people have used it to quit drinking alcohol. To someone super close to me kicked a Adderall dependency for like half a decade.
Wow.
and they would drink to pump the brakes after the Adderall, which is basically like legal meth. And some white lightning kratom helped her to completely change that whole and quit the Adderall and greatly reduce the drinking. And then people that are taking prescription pain medicine often find that it doesn't make them feel loopy and strange like Vicodin or Percocet does, but it still has the pain relief. And then just overall life, sense of well-being with the stress and anxiety. Things are kind of crazy and it's a struggle sometimes. So it just really helps with that. And so if people want to try, they can get a free ounce if they go to freeounceofkratom.com, and we'll send you an ounce of green Mangda, 28 grams. It'll last like 2 weeks, depending on how much you take. And I should say, because the government are haters, we can't accept credit or debit cards. And it's been like this for maybe 6 or 7 months. And before that, I had all these clever hacks, and like my Square account got shut down. My roommate's Square account got shut down. My PayPal, my girlfriend's PayPal. And I always had some little workaround where they would put their credit card in an offline credit card thing. And like half of it would go to my email, half of it would be on the back end of my point of sale for security. And then I would send myself a PayPal invoice to a dummy email account. I would enter the card info and stuff. But
and all the ways we try to circumvent the oppression.
I know it's been hard. Finally, along the way, though, I was like, you know what, this is too much trouble, and now it's almost impossible to make something happen like that. So we do e-check. It's an electronic check, and essentially you just enter your checking account and routing number, just the same information that's on the bottom of a check if you mail a check to someone, and it does an electronic draw from your checking account, and then it gets mailed and deposited in my checking account. Super safe and secure. Never had any issues, but some people may be caught off guard because everyone's used to using credit card and debit card online. And of course, we accept cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Dash, Ethereum, Bitcoin Cash. And interestingly enough, early on, I had a plugin for WooCommerce, and it would generate an invoice with a specific dollar amount that tied to the order. But they dropped me because I sold kratom. So even though it was a cryptocurrency company, it was like, wait a second, that's not supposed to be the thing. But it's a cryptocurrency company, so there's executives and whatever to put pressure on. That's the beauty of the trustless things and the actual Bitcoin network itself. But yeah, people can give it a try, and they'll get tapped into our newsletter and our community. And we have a Brave Botanicals community group and stuff. So try to just do more than selling a product, really trying to help people get a sense of belonging and there's a lot of people a lot of my customers they struggle in various different ways. So I'm trying to kind of encourage that more holistic thing. And as an anarchist, it's great to just use all my messaging. It's always anti-government messaging, and everyone's like, yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, freeounceofkratom.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It was my pleasure to get to speak to you and to talk to you about your history and to connect and to just see that you're continuing the work that you did so many years ago and are still going strong with that. So that's really encouraging to hear, and that, and peaceful parenting with your kids. So that's great.
Cool. Well, I have to ask, will you be at Anarchapulco?
I'm not going to be there. No, not this year. I was there last year and the year before. There's another event that me and Rebecca are going to called 10X Growth Conference. There's this guy named Grant Cardone that's like a business success guy. I'm totally obsessed with him. He's really helped me to grow my business and entrepreneurship. So we're going to go try that out. We've done the Anarchist Conference, and I think I've gotten a lot out of that, what I can get out of it. Although the best thing about conferences is just reconnecting with old friends and sitting around having a beer and relaxing. Yeah. But I'm hoping to.
Or networking if you're new. Yeah.
Yep. Hoping to try out these other kinds of conferences to get another new motivation in different areas of life.
Excellent. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for all your work in the. No, maybe one day. Just haven't had the chance.
We got some other conferences and things to do, but
yeah, we have our own, red flag reality.
Yeah, we're going to be doing this.
I checked out your Indiegogo campaign. It looks really professionally put together, and it's definitely an important topic. It seems like it's hard to push gun control measures, but they found some little hot item that seems to be doing pretty well legislatively, and I think it's going to lead to a lot of trouble. It already has led to trouble.
Yeah, we saw the writing on the wall. We knew it was coming, and we just really wanted to make sure that we could push back against the major anti-gun groups that had propaganda videos coming out, because I don't think there's many people, that's what I've seen, like really making that kind of content that's like a dramatized thing, you know, not an informational video, but like a dramatized thing showing what red flag law is really going to do. And so right now we actually I think we just hit over like 114 backers so far, about 16,000 raised or halfway point. So it's going really strong. So again, we put a link in there for you too, for the free ounce of kratom. And don't forget here that our support link here for the red flag reality. Don't forget that. It's also in the comments. So check that out, everybody too. But that's still going strong. So thanks for mentioning that.
So I just want to thank John for being part of this culture war. You know, as voluntarists, anarchists, libertarians, we're really in a war for in a war of ideas. We're trying to advocate for liberty. We're trying to push back against this narrative that tyranny is necessary for peace and prosperity. We're the complete opposite of that. So everything we do, whether it's Brave Botanicals, whether it's reaching out to our community and people around us in person, our family, friends, like we're really trying to spread a culture of self-knowledge and voluntary human interaction. So I'm really thankful to John for being in, the movement for much longer than me, and for continuing to do so, and every day trying to continue to find more passion to make this life better for yourself, your kids, your partner, but for everybody else as well. So I just want to thank you, and feels nice to have more people part of this journey, and to know we're not alone.
We're definitely not alone.
Crazy world.
Yeah. Y'all keep up the good work. I like your message and tone. It's that holistic.
Cool.
It gets overlooked a lot. There's a lot more than just political freedom out there. It's we all gotta be better people and treat each other better.
We are the conscious resistance. I have to, shout out to you for that. It's true.
Yeah.
All right. Take care, everybody. And we'll see you later. If you're watching this live right now, again, we'll see you later at 7 Eastern for another interview coming up with Michael Heiss. So take care, everybody. Thanks again, John. See you later.
Thanks everyone. Guys. Bye. Happy Sunday.
Yeah.